Hi, I'm David Mullinax, and I have read the text in my McKernan's Handbook as well as watched the instructional video.
Hi, I'm David Mullinax, and I have been given prior approval to use this stuffed husky for the following. Hey, I'm David Mullinax. I'm going to be demonstrating how to do an abdominal pressure wrap on a canine. I've got my husky here who's going to help me demonstrate this. I have 4 necessary supplies for this specific kind of wrap. I have my Telfa pad, I have my cast padding, my vet wrap, and I have my tape here. So it's going to go in that order onto the patient. And then I'll show you the application as well as the removal. And I do have bandage scissors in case I need those. Alright, so if an abdominal pressure wrap is needed, there's some kind of wound on the abdominal region. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place my Telfa pad on the bottom like this. And I'm going to wrap this cast padding around the abdominal region. And this layer provides support as well as cushion for the wound. I'm just gonna wrap it like this, being sure not to do it too tight and to cover the area completely to help provide pressure. The next layer of wrap is going to be the vet wrap that we use here, and here at Riverview we usually unroll the vet wrap and then we roll it back, which also helps with giving a little more ease to the idea not to do it too tight. Okay. Alright, so we have that all the way around, as you can see, and I'm just going to do one final thing to keep it from coming off of the patient. Is I'm going to take some of this tape here, and I'm just going to tape along the outer border of the wrap, half on the patient and half on the vet wrap. And that's just going to provide a little bit of extra support so that, you know, it doesn't come off easily. I'm going to do that on the front and the back. Okay. Alright, and that looks good. So that's how you apply a abdominal pressure wrap, and I'm going to show you now how to take it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my bandage scissors, and I'm just going to cut the top layer off, which is the tape and the vet wrap. Okay, I'm just going to cut down the midline, and it should just remove easily. Okay, so I can take that layer off and place it over here, and then my cast padding, if I can find the end of it, I'll be able to just unroll this. And then the Telfa pad, which is down here, I can take that off of the wound, and that is how you apply and remove an abdominal pressure wrap. I'm David Mullinax. I'm going to be demonstrating how to do an ear bandage for, let's say, an oral hematoma, something along those lines. I have all my supplies set up here in order of how I'm going to apply them. I have my Teflon pad as well as my gauze. The gauze is actually going to go underneath the ear. And then I have my cast padding, which is going to provide a lot of the cushion and support. And then I have roll gauze, followed by vet wrap. I have went ahead and unrolled and then rolled up the vet wrap because one of the main concerns here is that we don't get it too tight. After the vet wrap, I'm gonna, along the edges, I'm gonna place some tape to kind of keep it in place. And then I have a Sharpie. I'm actually gonna draw the ear out and put my initials as well as the date. And then I have bandage scissors. I probably won't be using these just to save some of the supplies, but that's always an option. And I have read the McKern's text as well as watched the instructional videos on how to do these bandages. Okay, so first I'm going to start by, we'll say this ear has the oral hematoma. So I'm going to place this gauze behind the ear like this and kind of bring it down. The Tefla pad is actually going to go on the wound itself. We're going to say that that's on the inside of the ear here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the midline of the head, and I'm going to just wrap over the ear here, being careful not to cover the dog's vision at all. And I'm going to alternate going behind the ear and in front of the ear as well. Get to where I can see a little better. Okay, so I went behind that time. I'm going to come around and actually go in front of the ear, the opposite ear. And I'm just going to alternate this process and kind of leave the non-injured ear exposed. Okay. Alright, so after that, I'm going to take my roll gauze and I'm going to repeat the same process. Okay, so I'm just going to start at the midline of the head and just come down and go behind the ear, and then I'll come back, and this time I will go in front of the ear. And I'm just going to repeat this until I can't do so anymore. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to come with my vet wrap now. And I'm going to start at the same point. Get this out a little more. Okay. So same idea. I'm just going to repeat the same process. And once again, I'm going to start behind the ear. And I'm going to go in front of the ear. And behind. And in front. And then behind. Okay. So that looks good there. I can now come with my tape. And this is gonna kind of go on the fur and the bandage, just so we kind of keep it out of the patient's eye first off, and then give it some support to where it is gonna stay a little better. I'm gonna do that on the front and the back of the bandage. And that's just gonna help it stay. I'll go ahead and initial and put today's date, which is the 21st. And that's gonna kind of provide, a little bit of say on whether, we need to change it or not, how long it's been on there. And finally, just to prevent any, accidents from happening in the clinic, I'm going to visualize where the ear is. I'm just going to draw it on the outside and right ear. Okay, and since we are so that's how you put it on. And since we are reusing a lot of this, I'm just gonna go ahead and unwrap the entire bandage as opposed to cutting it. So it comes off the exact opposite of how it went on. Okay, so I'm removing the tape here. And next, I'm gonna find where my vet wrap ended, which I believe was somewhere over here. And I can just take this off. Might make it a little easier if I grab this. Since we are reusing it, I'll just roll this up as quick as I can. Okay, and then next we're going to take off the roll gauze. And it's more common to see people cut these, so this is a little unorthodox, but you know, save a little money for the clinic. Alright, and I'm going to do my cast padding now, see where it ends, and I can just take it off. Okay, that came off easy. The last portion, this already came off as you saw, but you would remove the Teflon pad and inspect the injury there, maybe get a doctor's eyes on it and see if we need to rebandage or if it's ready to go. And that's how you apply and take off a ear bandage. Hey, I'm David Molnax, and I'm going to be demonstrating how to do a carpal flexion sling. I'm going to be using a hand to do the sling on. I'll just walk you through my equipment here. I've got cast padding, which I'm going to do initially. I'm going to follow that by some roll gauze and then an outer layer of vet wrap. And then I've got some tape to kind of help with stability, and I'm also going to be sure to mark it. And then we'll kind of take it from there, and I'll show you how to take it off as well. Alright, so my first layer is going to be the cast padding, and I'm going to be sure to keep the toes exposed so that if there is any swelling, I can be sure to be able to see that. Because of the toes being there, they would get swollen if it was too tight. It is kind of difficult to get the cast padding too tight, but you know, I'm going to be precautionary always. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do another layer for cushion, and the key to this is that I'm leaving the carcass exposed and I'm doing a figure 8 to kind of facilitate that happening properly. Just going to do one more layer, the exact same, go in the same direction. Okay, then I'll come up here. Okay. And from there I've got some good cushion and support. I can go ahead and do my roll gauze, which is going to kind of help keep it all together. Okay, and the general rule here is that with the roll gauze, vet wrap, cast padding, I want to do about 50% on a new surface and 50% on the previous. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and do my figure 8 here and then move up to the top. Okay.
You need more?
Yeah, we have some more. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and do another layer, just because that one was a little bit short. Okay, now to start at the bottom again, but since I do have one layer, I can kind of be a little more spread out with it until I get to the top. Okay, I kind of got to where I was, and I'll just continue. And what this layer is doing is it's kind of, once again, providing stability to the cast padding here. Okay, now that I've got that settled, I'm going to go ahead and get to my vet wrap, and I'm just going to do the same thing. Okay, go ahead and do my figure 8. Okay, I'll go ahead and work it back down. Do another figure 8 here. Okay, and I'm running out of vet wrap, but I've got a good amount here, so I'm just going to go ahead and unroll it and kind of finish it off. Alright, now the last step I'm going to want to do is I'm going to take some of this tape here, and I'm just going to do it all the way around the top to provide stability once again. So I'm going to do about half on the bandage and half on the arm. I'm just going to go all the way around, and I will go ahead and date and initial. Okay, and that way we know when it was put on, who put it on. If there's any questions, they know who to ask, or if, you know, this animal goes somewhere else, they have a date to go by when the bandage was placed. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take it off layer by layer, and I am going to roll it off. You can cut it, but it's always safer to roll it off, and for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and roll it off. Okay, so I'm going to start by taking the vet wrap off, and it just comes off exactly how it went on. Okay, and then I'm down to my roll gauze layer. And finally, the cast padding. Well, actually I had 2 layers of roll gauze, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and take this layer off as well. Okay, and I'll take my cast padding off. Okay, and one more layer. Alrighty, and then from here we can kind of reassess the situation here, and if we need to put it back on, we can. If we want to take x-rays, we can also do that, and kind of go from there. And that's how you do a carpal flexion sling. Hey, I'm David Molinax. I'm going to be demonstrating how to properly put on a modified Robert Jones with a splint. So I did get prior approval to use this stuffed animal in my video. And I've got all my supplies here that I can need. So I'm just going to go over those real quick. I've got 2 pieces of tape here along with a tongue depressor. I'm going to use that as a stirrup. Then I have my cast padding. I'll follow that with some roll gauze, and then I'll actually use the splint. And then I'll do a layer of vet wrap, followed by I'll do some taping, and then finally I'll do a little bit of tape with my initials and the date on it. So I'll go ahead and get Mr. Husky here into a proper restraint. Sarah will help me out with that. Thank you. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place 2 pieces of tape cranally and caudally on the limb here. We're going to say that this is the limb that needs splinting. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on the caudal portion. Okay, I'm just got my tongue depressor here to keep them from sticking to each other. Makes it a little easier to get them off when I do come to that step. The next step is actually going to be the cushion, and I'm just going to be sure to leave the toes exposed, and I'm going to, whenever you're wrapping, you want to wrap distally to proximal. So I'm just going to start down here, leaving the toes exposed, and I'm going to wrap about 50% over the padding and 50% on the patient, on a new area. Okay, and with the cast padding, once I get to my destination up here, I'm actually going to go ahead and cut the padding as opposed to just, you know, continuing up and down. I always want to start and work my way up. So I'm just going to do another layer, give it a little extra cushion. I'm going to once again make sure the toes are exposed. And the reason we do that is so that if it is too tight, we'll be able to see the swelling that happens in the toes. And I'm just wrapping it the same way I did. Okay, I'll go ahead and cut that as well. Okay, next I'm going to take my roll gauze here, and I'm going to go ahead and put that on in this same fashion. And what this is doing is it's just kind of providing a little bit of extra support so we keep this cast padding nice and tight. Not overly tight, because that is one issue with these bandages, is that it is definitely possible to put it on way too tight, which can cause problems. Okay, just got a little bit left. Go ahead and finish that off up here. Alright, and then I'm going to come get my stirrups, or my stirrup rather, and I'm just going to take them off one at a time, and I'm actually going to do a twisting motion so that the sticky side is facing the bandage here. And I come up, and the reason I'm doing this is so that the bandage doesn't have any mobility. I'm limiting that by, if you think about it, I've got a layer holding it on top and bottom now. So it really helps to kind of keep it from sliding down the limb. Okay, so we are doing a splint on this bandage, so I can go ahead and kind of line that up. And it's a pretty decent size here for this animal. So I'm just going to hold it in place, and I'm going to use vet wrap. And I've already pulled it off and rolled it back up, which kind of helps eliminate the problem. We're just going to start distally and go up proximally. And I'm going to try to cover up the edge of the spoon here. Okay. Okay, and it's really just the same idea, going up the limb, 50% on, 50% off. And when I get to the top, I can go ahead and cut or rip that piece so it fits nicely here. Okay. Alright, and then I'm going to actually put a piece of tape, waterproof tape at the bottom, just so it does prevent, you know, as much as it can kind of prevent, say, if this dog steps in a water puddle or in this water bowl, because the two main things you want to remember with bandages is you want to keep them clean and you want to keep them dry. So I'm just going to put a little bit here. Okay, and then finally I'll take a piece of tape and I'm just going to come right here and place it over. I'm going to actually tab this vet wrap, and to even further it, I'm just going to put a piece of tape on the very end, and on that piece of tape I'm going to write my initials and the date that I changed the bandage, so that, you know, if this dog has to go anywhere at another clinic or even in our own clinic, we have an idea, or they have an idea of when it was changed, and, you know, they can kind of gauge treatment accordingly.
One.
Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to properly take the bandage off. I'm going to start by getting off my external tape here. And I've got a little bit at the bottom as well as up at the top where I tabbed. I'm just going to take that off so it doesn't give us any problems later on. Okay, and then I'll remove my initials, and as you can see, it was put on March 21st. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the layer of vet wrap, exposing the splint, and I find it easier just to go ahead and roll it up. It is possible to cut through these layers, but it is safer to just peel them off one by one. And for this video, I'm going to be demonstrating that. Okay, so that exposed the splint. I can go ahead and remove that. And then I've got these external layers of tape here. I can take those back. And now I'm to my roll gauze. And I'm just going to kind of get this off. Alright, and that gets me to my cast padding, and I'm just going to take that off real quick. And while I'm doing this, if this was a real animal, I'd be sure to support the leg fully, just in case there was still a fracture or, you know, whatever we're dealing with here. We want to treat it with the utmost care. Okay, and that gets me to the final layer of tape, so I'm just going to remove that. And from here, we can kind of reassess the situation, take radiographs if needed. We can palpate the area. Whatever we need to do from here, we're able to, because I now took the bandage off. But that's how you properly put on and remove a modified Robert Jones with a splint.